So you guys may recall that a while back I did a response to a furry YouTuber named Misha Barkin, in which he argues in favor of vaccine and mask requirements at conventions in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, in a sort of deja vu to the whole Professor Stick incident, Misha discovered the video, which ultimately led to his fans flooding the comment section, and Misha ended up making a response of his own. Well, sort of. You see, I'm reluctant to call this a response because Misha intentionally goes out of his way to obscure to whom and what video it is that he's responding to. I mean, it kind of is hard to call it a response if you're not going to make it clear exactly who or what it is you're responding to, but anyways, let's get into it.
I wanted to save this part for last, but you've probably seen in the community posts, someone made a 30-minute video about a video I made 4 months ago.
So real quick, I just want to take this opportunity to clear up some misconceptions people seem to have had about their video, because I got the impression that Misha and his fans interpreted the video as a personal attack against him. So I want to make it clear to anyone watching this that my intention in making that video wasn't to personally attack Misha, rather to explain why I disagree with his arguments regarding COVID. I have zero bad blood with Misha, alright? I'm not super familiar with his content. I've only watched like a handful of his videos. From what I can tell, he seems like a pretty cool guy. I did invite him to come on my show and have a conversation with me. Obviously, if I had some kind of personal vendetta against him, I wouldn't have done that. Understand that just because I make a response video against someone doesn't necessarily mean I have some sort of personal beef against them. All it means is that that person said something erroneous that I feel needs correcting. I've even made response videos to people I consider myself a fan of. Just so that we're all clear on this moving forward, that video was attacking Misha's arguments, not Misha.
Which is fine, everyone's entitled to their own opinion and are able to, discuss things freely. I make sure to make absolute certain that everyone's aware that you're allowed to have different opinions. You're allowed to vocalize those opinions.
So this is something I do definitely have to give Misha credit for. There's a huge tendency for furries to screech and turn their nose up and run away when they hear opinions they don't like. So the fact that Misha, at least to some extent, is willing to support free speech and at least listen to what I have to say, that's something I do have to give him credit for. Even if we don't see eye to eye on our viewpoints, that at the very least is something I can respect him for.
This one's just not great.
So obviously Misha doesn't think the video is that good, which is fine. He's entitled to his opinion just as much as anyone else. But since he's saying that he didn't think the video was that good, you would probably then assume that he's going to provide some actual critiques of the video in question. And well, if that's what you're expecting here, then prepare to be disappointed.
Now, I'm not going to say who. A lot of you went and found the channel, which if I explicitly do not say who or what it is, don't do that, because you're giving them views.
Well, I mean, dude, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, you announced to your entire fan base that this video is out there. I mean, duh, no shit they're going to try and find it. If you didn't want people to go find the video, if you didn't want to give me attention or clout or whatever, then why even mention the video at all? I mean, the video is public. It's out there for anyone to see. It has my name on it. Anyone can find this video and know that I'm the person who made it. So I'm not sure what exactly it is you're trying to conceal by not mentioning the channel the video's from. I feel like this is a good invocation of the Streisand effect. The Streisand effect is a term used to describe a phenomenon in which trying to conceal something can inadvertently end up drawing attention to it. This is like a textbook example of that.
A lot of these channels like this that are always doing response videos to bigger channels, they're not doing it for actual debate or actual discussion.
Liar, liar, pants on fire, crooked as can be.
Bruh, that's a lie and you know it. I specifically went out of my way to offer you to come on my show and have a debate with me. I mean, you said in the beginning of your video that you were interested in having a discussion about this. Well, that video was me engaging in that discussion.
They're doing it for clout.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
Wow, way to make a bad faith assumption there, buddy. Yeah, that's right. Apparently everyone who makes response videos is just doing so for clout and isn't actually interested in having a discussion about the matter. The funny thing about this is that Misha has also criticized content from larger figures within the furry community. He, for example, has criticized content from Diesel Raccoon, who has a lot larger of a presence within the furry community than he does. So I guess according to his own logic, he's just chasing clout.
Which unfortunately you guys ended up giving him. The views almost tripled by the time I'm making this video. Odds are they're doing it for attention, and they're doing it for the engagement, and unfortunately it worked.
You know, I never understood this criticism. You just made that video for attention. Like, yeah, duh, no shit. Isn't that the whole point of making a video in the first place? For people to watch it? Do you really think people sit there going through all the painstaking effort of recording and editing content with the expectation that nobody's going to watch it?
So just keep that in mind for the future. Also, as funny as some of the comments were, don't go comment on it either. either. That really helps the algorithm, and just, it makes me look kind of bad if you guys are, shitting on the person.
I have no problem with people leaving critical comments on my videos. I'm more than just okay with people criticizing my content, I straight up encourage it. If you disagree with something I say in my videos and you want to share your own opinion in the comments, then by all means you are more than welcome to do so. The problem here is that most of the people who are flooding into the video to comment on it weren't really leaving intelligent comments, they were just kind of shitposting and being dicks. There were maybe like 1 or 2 comments that actually made an attempt to engage with the arguments being put forward in the video and actually criticize what I have to say, but most of the comments were people just being dicks.
And because at the end of the day, I'm not mad that they made the video. It's their opinion, and they have every right to do that. Now onto the video itself. I'm not making a response video. Long story short, the TLDR, I don't care enough.
If you don't care about the issue enough to actually make a response to my arguments, then why even mention a video at all?
They made the response video on something I talked about 4 months ago when the entire state of the world was completely different. Omicron didn't even exist. This was a video about me talking about if FurCon should be going on, by the way, which was published in August, right when the Delta variant was the biggest one, where Delta wasn't spreading as much as Omicron, but it was much more severe. So unfortunately, this person was trying to take data from 4 months ago and compare it to today's data, and you can't do that. At least not across the board. You can compare to see where we are today, but that's not what he was doing. He was debating my arguments at the time and trying to say why I was wrong. At least that was the interpretation I got.
Okay, so this is actually a fair criticism. When you have an ongoing issue such as a pandemic, the facts on the ground can change rather quickly. So perhaps it is a bit unfair for me to use data from when my video was recorded to criticize the arguments that Misha made when his video was recorded. This is actually a completely fair point. However, Misha seems to be trying to imply that this was the entirety of the arguments that I made. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe some of my arguments can be criticized on the grounds that the data is different from when Misha recorded his video, but a lot of the arguments I made, such as there's no proof that mask mandates actually work, or that targeted protections focused on specific people who are vulnerable are more effective than widespread lockdowns, were just as true at the beginning of the pandemic as they were when Misha recorded his video and when I recorded mine. So yeah, this might be able to explain away some of my criticisms, but certainly not all of them.
Secondly, the video is 30 minutes long. It is 3 times the size of my video, and
So one of the biggest criticisms the video got was its length. And you know what, truth be told, yeah, I can be a bit of a chatterbox sometimes. I'm the kind of person who can take a 5-minute video and blow it up into a 30-minute response. Maybe I should run for the Senate, I'd be pretty good at filibustering. But in all seriousness, one of the reasons the video was so long is just because this is inherently a complex issue. Pandemics and public health crises are just inherently complex issues. It's hard to really have a discussion about it one way or the other without going into details to at least some extent.
The whole thing is fallacies. As much as I hate to say it, there was maybe 1 or 2 good arguments that I found in the video where it was like, okay, this is a new opinion. This is something that I didn't think of. The rest of it was just multiple different fallacies.
So notice how he just claims that I was making fallacious arguments without actually providing any examples or explaining why they were fallacious. If you want to argue that my arguments were fallacious, then by all means go for it, but if you're going to do that, you need to back it up with examples.
Where he would build a straw man and misinterpret what I said and then immediately tear that down to make himself look right.
So are you going to provide any examples of this? Saying that I intentionally misrepresented your arguments to make myself look right is an accusation of dishonesty. That's a pretty big thing to just leave on the table and not back up. I actually feel like I put in a good amount of effort to try and understand what Misha was arguing. A lot of the difficulty arose from his use of ambiguous terminology. For example, in his video, Misha frequently uses the words anti-mask and anti-vax. The problem is these terms are very vague and don't specifically pinpoint what group of people they're referring to. For example, there's at least 3 different groups of people that the term anti-masker could potentially be referring to. It could be referring to people who are opposed to mask wearing altogether. It could be for people who may not prefer to wear a mask themselves but don't mind if someone else wants to wear one. Or it could be someone who doesn't have a problem with masks and maybe would even prefer to wear one but thinks they should be optional and not mandated. If you're going to use ambiguous terminology and not explain specifically what it is that you're referring to, don't be surprised if people might misinterpret what point you're trying to get across.
And he's no longer talking about what I'm talking about anymore. He's created his own narrative and just tears that down.
Isn't that exactly what you're doing to me, though? By assuming that I'm making the video with bad faith intentions in order to just get attention or clout or whatever?
Secondly, there was a lot of whataboutism where it's like, oh, well, we're doing this, well, that's gonna lead to this, or like, oh, well, like one of their points was, what about people who are allergic to the vaccine?
I don't think this guy understands what a whataboutism is. The term whataboutism specifically refers to a diversion tactic, in which you levy an unrelated criticism against your opponent in order to avoid having to address the issues that they raise. If events are requiring vaccination as a condition of attending, then that means that people who can't take the vaccine for legitimate medical reasons are going to be left out. The issue being raised here is therefore relevant to the conversation at hand. Therefore, it's not a whataboutism. Here's a better example of a whataboutism. Suppose that Misha said that he thinks I should be allowed to make this video because he believes in free speech. And then I respond by saying, well, Misha, you agreed with TFF banning Diesel Raccoon because of the opinions he's shared on social media. So how can you possibly believe in free speech? That would be an actual example of a whataboutism, because I'm levying an unrelated criticism against my opponent in order to derail the conversation.
Which, unfortunately, that is a catch-22, but we need to look at people's safety as a whole.
I don't think this guy understands what a catch-22 is either. The term catch-22 is used to refer to a situation in which two conditions are mutually dependent. In order for a condition X to be met, condition Y first has to be met, but also in order for a condition Y to be met, condition X first has to be met. For an example of this, suppose that you have a technician who's going to repair an electrical generator. In order to do so, he has to be able to use his power tools. But in order for his power tools to work, the electrical generator has to be operating.
And unfortunately, some people might be excluded from these events. That's unfortunate, but it's gonna happen in order to ensure everyone's safe.
The problem here is that there's no data to show that requiring vaccines does actually keep people safer. I mean, if there was, then yeah, we could have that conversation. Is excluding certain people necessary if it keeps the event safer for everyone? But that data just isn't there. The vaccines primarily prevent symptoms, not transmission, meaning that they mostly protect the person receiving it as opposed to people around them. While this might still be good grounds for encouraging people to get vaccinated before attending the event, it does weaken the case for requiring it as a mandatory condition of attending. We also have events that don't require vaccination to use as a control group. Anthrocon actually had more positive COVID cases this year than Megaplex, even though Anthrocon required the vaccine and Megaplex didn't. And it's not like excluding unvaccinated people is absolutely necessary to keep people safe. I mean, some conventions have done a negative test exemption, which I consider to be a reasonable compromise. But also, people who are allergic to the vaccine being excluded from events wasn't my only argument against vaccine requirements. Even if there were no people who had legitimate medical reasons not to take the vaccine, something about events trying to play doctor and trying to involve themselves in people's personal medical affairs just doesn't sit well with me. It has a very Orwellian kind of vibe to it. There's a lot of arguments to be made against vaccine requirements for events. They unfairly exclude people, they're invasive into people's personal medical affairs, there's no data that shows they actually keep people safer, most furries are vaccinated anyways, so it's kind of pointless. In my opinion, it just seems like there's more cons than pros to vaccine requirements. And that's not even to mention other issues I brought up, such as conventions requiring both vaccines and masks, even though the CDC says you only need one or the other. But this video is already getting pretty long as it is, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
He tried to compare that argument to banning, like, black or gay people from events.
So this is one thing I said in the video that got quite a bit of criticism. So let me take a moment to clarify what point I was trying to get across here. I wasn't necessarily trying to argue that vaccine requirements are comparable to racial segregation in every conceivable way. The point I was trying to make here that people who are allergic to the vaccine or have some sort of legitimate medical reason why they can't take it are being excluded from the event for a reason that they can't help. Just as black people can't help being black, gay people can't help being gay, or women can't help being women, although I suppose nowadays we have surgery for that, but that's besides the point. My point of this analogy wasn't necessarily to argue that vaccine requirements and racial segregation are equivalent, but rather to get people to understand and perhaps consider that the mandates that they're calling for are in fact going to exclude people from these events for reasons they can't help, in ways that would be considered unfair if people were excluded for reasons they couldn't help in other contexts. And this point is especially important in a fandom that puts such a high value on inclusivity. When I first joined the furry fandom back in high school, it was a very inclusive community. It was considered the place where anyone, regardless of age, race, gender, orientation, etc., could just come and socialize and have a good time. And you know, myself being autistic and bisexual, it just seemed like a place I'd naturally fit in. Which is why it kind of makes me sad to see that as of recently, the fandom is kind of going the opposite direction. Nowadays, it seems like there's a lot of gatekeeping going on in the fandom. It seems like a lot of furries want to virtue signal about how inclusive they are. Like, you know, they say it's important that we use people's pronouns, and if a guy with a penis and balls says they're a woman, then we all have to believe they're a woman, because we have to be inclusive. But then they'll turn around and won't even offer offer people who are allergic to the vaccine the minor concession of a testing exemption. Kind of makes you wonder how genuine their commitment to inclusivity really is.
Which, no, what the
So it's clear that Misha disagrees with this analogy, but he never explains why it's a bad analogy. If I had to pinpoint the single biggest problem with this video, it would be that Misha levies criticisms against my video without actually explaining them. He says I make fallacious arguments but doesn't provide any examples. He says that I strawman and misrepresent his arguments but doesn't explain how. He says that this analogy is bad but doesn't explain why. Look, Misha has every right to criticize my video. This is a free country, everyone's entitled to their opinion, that's fine. But if you are going to criticize my video, you're going to need to back up your criticisms with some sort of an explanation.
He also asked if I want to debate, which no, I don't. I don't care enough to make a response video, and I don't want to debate because I tend to have a stutter and I tend to have trouble getting out my thoughts or my words on the spot. This is why I make videos, so that I can, do the research ahead of time and plan what I'm going to say so that it's smooth when I deliver it and for the video. The video flows a lot better if I know what I'm gonna say. This unfortunately can't happen in a live debate, and it's not because, I'm gonna hear some gotcha argument. I could. Maybe I would hear an argument that would change my opinion. That being said, if I'm not able to properly deliver my opinion back, I don't feel like it's a good debate.
This is actually something I can totally sympathize with. I have autism and Down syndrome. As a result, I tend to stutter a lot and have difficulty communicating sometimes. You don't really notice it in my videos because I'm able to kind of clean it up in editing, but people often ask me why I don't do live streams, and that's a big reason why. However, if Misha feels that speech impediments on his part would be a barrier to communicating accessibly during a live debate, I'd be more than willing to accommodate him in other ways. We could do a text-based debate in a Discord chat. We could even make pre-recorded video segments for each other to respond to rather than doing a live debate. So if Misha feels that there would be communication barriers in place, I'd be more than happy to find other ways to accommodate that.
Also, we're gonna go into this debate. My opinion's not gonna change. His opinion's not gonna change.
You seem to have an unrealistic idea of what actually happens during a debate. Seldomly is there ever a debate where there's one clear-cut person who comes out victorious, who completely changes the mind of their opponent. Usually what actually happens during a debate is both sides have their beliefs challenged, and as a result both sides come away with a better understanding of the nature of the disagreement than they had when they went into the debate.
He's gonna end up with a lot more views because, oh, I debated a channel with 8,000 subs.
For someone who's accusing me of clout chasing, you sure seem pretty obsessed over metrics. You seem to be making a big deal about view counts and subscriber counts. I'm not really concerned about all that shit. I'm just in it for the fun. I'm a small channel with only 300 subs. I only have like 5 videos with more than 1k views. Do I care about this? No. I do this because I enjoy it. You want to know the real honest-to-goodness reason I made that video, Misha? It's because I wanted all of the furries who aren't on the far left to know that they're not alone.
So yeah, at the end of the day, I just don't care enough to reply. I've got much bigger things going on in my life right now than to worry about someone trying to compare data from 4 months ago to today and just misinterpreting everything I say and using my entire video in their video, and I just don't have the time or the energy or the care for it. I've got my own things going on. I don't owe anyone an ounce of my time.
I totally understand if Misha doesn't want to debate me. I thought it would have made for an interesting conversation, but if he feels he has other matters to attend to, then I completely understand. As a YouTuber, you only have so much time and energy to make videos. Sometimes you do have to pick and choose what topics you're more interested in discussing. And look, fellas, don't pester him, alright? If he's not interested, he doesn't have to. Pestering him just makes me look bad, alright?
Not to mention, his entire sources list was just almost exclusively YouTube videos, which anyone can log on here and say anything they want, and then you could link it as a source, and that doesn't make it true.
That's true for any content on the internet, regardless of format. People can say whatever they want in a YouTube video, in a blog post, in an article. The format that a source takes isn't what makes it a good source or not. What makes something a good source is the quality of the information that it provides, as well as how well researched it is. You can have a scholarly journal that puts forward a bunch of misinformation just as easily as you can have a well-researched and well-put-together YouTube video. And the videos that I linked to, I felt did a pretty good job of researching the facts and gathering data. One of the videos I linked to was from Shane Killian, who is a YouTuber who does an excellent job of researching his content. Another video I linked to is a Tom Woods interview with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is an infectious disease expert from India, who, to put it frankly, has been doing Dr. Fauci's job for him. This guy has been researching and staying on top of the pandemic a lot more than the so-called experts over here. One source in particular I want to focus people's attention on is a link to a study from Reuters University, which studies the effectiveness of mask mandates. Basically what this study does is it gathers data from not just states across the US, but also countries across Europe, and compares the rate of COVID infection before and after a mask mandate is introduced. Basically, it's a study to determine how effective mask mandates actually are. And the reason I want to draw people's attention to this source in particular is because it takes data from a year-long period. So obviously, I'm not just using data that's 4 months out of date to attack Misha's arguments.
But yeah, the whole thing just felt like some big algorithm grab where they're using my name to boost their own channel, as little as it may be. And I'm not interested in giving someone like that the attention. I hope you guys can respect that, and I hope that makes sense.
Actually, it doesn't make any sense. If you don't want to draw attention to the video, then why even mention it at all? I mean, you're not even really putting forth an effort to debunk anything I had to say, so why even mention the video at all? You're just kind of wasting your time here, bro. This video was a steaming hot pile of garbage. And you know what? I hate to say it, I really do. Because I want to hear good criticisms against my content. As I explained in the video where I address YouTube removing the dislike count, you'll never grow as a content creator if you only ever receive positive feedback. So I do want to hear genuinely good, legitimate criticism against my content, but this just wasn't it. This guy made like one actually fair criticism against my video. The data has changed in the time between our two videos were recorded, so it's a bit unfair for me to use more current data to attack arguments he made in the past. That's actually a fair criticism. But that's like the only genuine, fair, legitimate criticism he's made. Most of the time he's just accusing me of shit and not actually backing it up. He says that I made fallacies or that I strawmanned him, but doesn't provide any explanation how or why. He actually strawmans me a lot more than I strawman him. He basically throws me under the bus and makes bad faith assumptions on my motivation behind making the video, saying that I just made it for clout or attention or whatever. It seems like he's more concerned about my motivation behind making the video more so than the video itself, which like is completely irrelevant. Even if it is true that I just made the video for attention or clout, that still wouldn't automatically make what I say in the video wrong. A video made for the sole purpose of gaining attention or clout could still be factually accurate. So yeah, I want to hear good criticisms against my arguments, but this video here simply wasn't it. I want to close out this video with a message to Misha, in the rare event he happens to stumble upon it. First of all, in case I haven't made this clear enough already, I'm criticizing your arguments, not you personally. So I just want to establish that right from the onset. No bad blood, no hard feelings between us. And second of all, if you're not interested, if you feel you have better things to do with your time, hey, I totally understand and respect that, but my offer to come on my show and have a discussion, still completely on the table. It doesn't even have to be like a super heated debate. It can just be like, a conversation. If you're interested, feel free to slip in my Discord and send me a message. Until next time, this has been Philosophossum making stupidity play dead. Everyone take care.